So yeah, let me just jump back into that. I want to just, give you that compliment. It's something really special that, we met early on in school. What was it, like sixth grade?
Was that sixth grade?
I went to Bayshore third grade and sixth grade.
Wow.
So I think it was sixth grade. And, it felt very liberating to be around you and to interact. And I always felt very pulled away from that. Like, certain relationships weren't allowed. It's kind of how ladies will hold hands, and at a certain point, men are kind of told like you're not really supposed to be holding hands with other men. And it seems like there's this fear of a love expression between men within our society, and I've always felt very embraced by you, and just the level of joking that you have, that you bring out of me and allow to be embraced and allow to be silly, is just a very safe space. I feel when I'm around you, and I love it.
Thank you, man. It's interesting to have the opposite of that experience when you're with somebody and you're sort of self-monitoring. And then as soon as that drops away with someone, that's like a really special thing, it seems.
Yeah.
Because do you feel like you're sort of, you can be sort of different in different groups of people? Like, how like in school you'd go from class to class, and one class you'd be less talkative, and in the other class you'd be raising your hand all the time and just like...
Yeah. It's almost like there's a limiting factor to what can be expressed in certain scenarios. There's something recently that I did with a good friend of mine, Daniel, very first friend I ever had in life, and that I've kept throughout life. And he has a very brass way of speaking, a lot of fuck yous. He embraces it fully, and he just speaks very brassly.
Really?
Like,
okay.
Yeah, and I've embraced his language as opposed to trying to, or as opposed to thinking of it as a way that I need to like educate or try to get you to speak from a different place. And so I embraced his language, and I've started to speak to him with his language. And so I'll start speaking to him in these ways, and our relationship has really grown a lot because I was attributing too much value to these words, and it was removing aspects of expression that I wouldn't allow. And in a typical day, I'm never going to say those things to anyone. But now I feel somewhat liberated. I have a relationship where that language is allowed and it's not judged. Yeah. It's
so you've known him forever.
Yeah.
Did you? So you
we our first interaction came from me trying to find the kids in the community that would help me with Pokemon. I was trying to beat the Pokemon game.
Wow.
And he, at age 7, age 10, he was like, "What's up, bitch? Like, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm trying to find Eric and Douglas. I need help on Pokemon. I'm stuck." And he's like, "Oh, bitch, they moved. You didn't know that?" He's like, "I could help you with Pokemon." And so like we became great friends because he would help me with the Pokemon, and then we were really the only people around in that community of that age, and so we just started to hang out a lot. But he always had that brassness with him, that like. But I feel like he lives life in the way that most people want to live life, but they're afraid. They feel like they will not be supported, or they will not find what they need for themselves, or just be able to provide for themselves. And he lives in like the most free way. There's only a few people that I met that live in that way, and it's like no qualms. Like there's no issues with anything. Just I don't know. Very interesting how he lives life. It's always been very inspiring to me.
What does he do for a living?
Gosh, smokes weed for a living. Not that he makes money out of that, but that's... He's
a professional smoker?
Man, just all the time.
Daily?
Oh, definitely.
All day?
Yeah, all day. Every day. Yeah,
it's
not a right day if it's not present for him.
And he works a job?
Yeah. I think it's the... like industrial, like kitchenware stuff that his company provides to people, like dishwashers, or just the different materials that a high-end kitchen would need to do things. And he works in this. He's in Alaska, and
he's in Alaska.
Yeah, he works out there, and he loves that state. And there's a lot of craziness out in that state. It's like the most polluted state but it's the most beautiful place if you go out into the nature, but it's the most polluted. It's the highest crime rate per capita. And he loves the space. He's from there. His dad's from there. His dad died up there, and, he loves it. And I was having a talk with him the other day. He's actually going to be a dad. He's having a baby, and it's just crazy to me. He's so legend. He's so legend in my mind.
Did he follow you up there, or did y'all just move at the same time?
Or
did
I
was he
followed
there
him.
first? Okay.
He was from there, kind of. Like, I think he was born in Washington, but pretty much grew up in Alaska. We met in Apollo Beach. We had always talked about living up there and giving it a go. And a mutual friend of ours, AJ, went up there with Daniel about 6 months or so before I did, and we were just in a place where we could do it. So we just jumped into it. Very healing time for me. The energy up there is amazing. I mean, like, gravity and time is slightly different up there, just like how the planet is shaped and what goes on up there. So you literally have a different experience of gravity, a different experience of time. On the summer solstice, my birthday, June 21st, the sun does a circle in the sky. It doesn't set, it just like does a circle. And it's a crazy thing to experience. 24 hours of sunlight, it doesn't go away. And 4 to 5 hour sunsets where the sun, dips as a parabola and then just follows the coast, and then comes right back up. And it's like some of the, most unique, that like green flash moment that you can get in sunsets or sunrises sometimes. And like, it might actually just like stay green because it's like right at that perfect point. And it's like a really intense, I got to see the aurora was really strong. I even got to see it in the city one day, and it's just the energy flow of the planet dipping down in, and it just is like it's a crazy energetic ocean that moves.
When you say the gravity is different, how so?
It's just slightly different. Like gravity, just around the equator, there's a pretty constant of gravity around the equator and extending away from that. But as you get further and further and closer to the poles, it just warps. Like, time is slightly different. Gravity is either like a little bit stronger or a little less strong. And so you literally have entirely different sensations on your body than you're used to if you have always lived in one place. You know what I mean?
Do you feel heavier or lighter?
I would say lighter. It felt like for me, it was a very healing time up there. A lot of meditating and tons of tears, like just lots of crying when I would meditate up there, just tons of release. It was very, very unique.
Holy shit. How old were you?
That was maybe about 3 years ago. So I would have been right around 24, 25.
Okay. So your friend was going up there already. At what point did you start talking to him about maybe joining him? Or had you always just been chatting about that?
It was always a topic that was on the table. He was always super pumped about Alaska. And I even went and visited him once out there. The craziest drunk story I think that I have took place when I went and visited him out there. He was, pouring drinks, and I was just belligerent. And I was like, stealing his drinks as he was pouring them. And maybe like 4 or 5 times I just like threw back whatever he was pouring. And I just remember being out of my mind. Ended up laying down on a couch. Thank goodness he was awake. I threw up just laying on my back. God. And he turned me onto my side. And I would have just drowned in my own throw up if he hadn't have been there. Of course, they had to get rid of that couch. That couch was gone. I remember waking up and I was like, oh, no. And that was the only time I've ever experienced a hangover. I carried a bag around with me all day, like nothing. It was almost like food poisoning. Like it was not good. We had to do some chores that day. I was like, yo, bro, I can't do these chores. You got to mow the lawn. I'm going to just start throwing up all over everything. And he was like, man, all right, whatever. I'll do this, but...
Did that have a lasting effect on you in how you deal with alcohol? Because you've never seemed to be that interested in drinking.
I was interested in drinking early on in life, and I wouldn't say that was any like pinnacle deciding factor.
Oh, okay.
But
that was just a one-off sort of terrible hangover.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't like...
No, I'm never going to do that again.
Never going to drink again.
No. And I'm still very cause and effect in some ways. And if I am going to drink... I want to experience the like full effect. I almost don't even see the point in like having one beverage in like a social situation. Like I wonder why it's needed to like lubricate a conversation for some people, or to, you know, why is a depressant needed for you to lower your inhibitions to carry on a conversation or to be in a little bit more vulnerable of a space. And I've never used it for that. I've used it to experience the effects that alcohol does, like the inebriation, the, you know, changing of vision, or just lack of motor skills, or slurred speech.
But you don't have any sort of predisposition to...
No, I don't think so. I mean...
That's interesting.
I don't think so.
So your relationship with that is way different than it is with
But that's
weed.
my relationship. Well, I guess so. I definitely...
Like it's not the same muscle of like being interested in intoxication. It's like a totally separate thing.
No, yeah. With most drugs, I if I take them, I enjoy experiencing just like the spectrum that they offer. I would say weed is probably something that I use the most out of anything. I was diagnosed like ADHD, but like who's not? It's really just a kid. You know, kids really aren't meant to sit still. They're meant to move around. And think about the negative reinforcements of that. I know I was put in timeout growing up a lot, and so like sitting still is negatively reinforced for me, and anyone that's ever put in timeout is negative reinforcements with being still.
Yeah.
But wonderful information comes out of being still.
It's like it's used as a punishment when we're children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're doing more meditation in schools though, aren't they these days? In 2019, aren't they trying to teach kids how to meditate from a younger age?
Yeah. The mindfulness is definitely coming on early.
I want to talk about ADD or ADHD.
Yeah, attention deficit disorder, and it's the same thing. It's just one kid is more hyper than the other, and to me, all it means is that it's not like attention is lost. It's just that everything is so exciting, and so as soon as you recognize in your peripherals that there's something else, it's like, oh my goodness, it's not that I'm losing attention here.
Yeah,
it's that I've already experienced this. This is something new, and I need to go experience what that is. It's not that I've like lost interest here. It's just, I'm aware of all these other options, and I need to experience more. To me, people with ADD or ADHD just have a constantly widening scope. There's not a need to sit still with one thing because there's just so much to go to, and they're still learning what it is that they want to sit still with. And so instead of allowing them that space to find that, they're penalized and put on a speed drug and told to sit still.
Yeah, for ADD or however it's described, that is interesting coming to terms with. Because like you said, it's you'll have like 30 different Chrome tabs open. I don't know if you use Google Chrome.
I'm not a tab master, but a good friend of mine always has like 30 plus. He'll have like 4 or 5 windows all filled with like 30 plus tabs. I call him the tab master. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? You keeping tabs on everything. I know. When are you going to read these? Just stop, read that one, close it, stop, read that one. But no, everything leads to another one, and then you want to have that link open so that you can reference it before you forget that it's connected.
For me, it's YouTube. It'll be a YouTube tab I have open. I won't finish the video, and I'll tab over to another YouTube video. Start watching that one. Then there'll be like one Chrome page with like 10 tabs, and I'll minimize that, and then open up a new page.
Now, does that happen because within the video you're watching something's referenced that you want to find out more about? So you're like, all right, pause here so I have more perspective to understand their conscious flow. And then that just continues to lead into another video having information that you want to learn more about. And then therefore you pause that one, look up on that. Yeah.
The subject goes in so many different directions because it has to do with that little like micro phenomenon. But then there's like freelancing and having side projects that you never finish. It's a similar thing. A family friend of ours called it the shiny penny syndrome. Which I think it's actually
the shiny penny
syndrome. It's when you're super interested in something for a short amount of time. So I don't know. Again, I know that ADD. It'd be interesting to read up on like the contemporary research and what new stuff has been discovered in 2019 about the actual somebody that has like a pathological, inability to focus, similar to say dyslexia.
I also have a diagnosis of that, but mine is a thought pattern backwardsness. Like my brain, they said, fires backwards. So and apparently my dad has it, my brother have it. And there are times where we'll be in a room interacting and one of us will say something or reference something And it's not that we share that experience. It's that our brains follow each other, and we'll start chuckling about something, and everyone else in the group is like, wait, what? How did that go?
Right.
What? And it's not that we share that experience that lets us, an inside joke reference. It's that we just are, oh, okay, we get it.
Dude, isn't it weird to reference things too when your thoughts skip ahead, say 4 beats, and then you're suddenly talking about that to someone and they have lost your train of thought? Do you ever experience that?
Oh, yeah.
And that can be very unsettling to experience. Especially when it continues
to
happen.
It becomes 2 conversations then. Like I'm sharing with you about something, and you think you're listening to something totally different.
Right.
And then it's within any conversation, what is it? There's like 5 outcomes. There's point A to point B to point A, and then there's the perception of B to A and the perception of A to B. So there's like 4 or 5 different things that come out of it. Potentialities, yeah.
Yeah. Conversational compatibility is an interesting subject because my brother and I have been talking about this like chat app. Have you heard of Hala? It's sort of like chat roulette, but a modern version of it.
Okay.
And it's sort of like has this algorithm that tries to block porn and sort of obscenities from just arising. So you open the app and you press go, and then it just cues you with some random person.
Well, that's cool. That's cool because I remember it was all dicks on chat roulette.
Exactly.
It was just dicks in your hand.
Just completely
just
useless.
Next dick.
I started to, the idea for this app would basically be an app that pairs you with people specifically to chat with that match up with you.
So you make a little bit of a profile or something
exactly,
so you're matching up with shared interests and things like that.
Shared interests. And then what our conversation was about and what my train of thought was how much further could you press that? Or how many like other layers of compatibility could you match people with? So it's not just I'm vegan, they make beats, or we're both vegan, we're both Democrats, we're both this. Okay, that's what gets you in the door. But sometimes you have the experience of matching up with people and then you're not best friends, for the rest of your life, or you don't have an amazing conversation.
So are you saying like kind of applying like some of what eHarmony does on the dating site, but it's not necessary that it needs to be about like the sexual outcome of that, about just friendship engagement and like finding your tribe.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought tribe would be a cool name. Unfortunately, it's taken, but
I did some tribe fit stuff when I was in Alaska. I led these classes. I was the tribe corps captain. Got these ladies some ripped abs, let me tell you. Go on. That was a sidebar.
No, fuck. There's so much to talk about. But yeah, no, we can finish this up. But it would just be an interesting like sociological experiment because the point of it would be to basically be chatting with yourself. Just to run this as an experiment, like no value judgment on whether or not that's good or bad to just be in an echo chamber, but just see what happens when you're queued up with somebody who's like your age. It could go so deep, like speech patterns, if there was like a software that was analyzing.
I think it also has to do with like the amount of judgment or the internal intent. Like
there's a lot that you can't get out because it's sort of like how do you match thought patterns when we don't have that?
Because we could match up on all the right things, and as you said, have no connection in like a physical place, like with each other.
Yeah.
But it's the experience of feeling the intent that's being expressed, as opposed to getting caught up in what they look like, what words they choose to use. Is the person willing to feel the intent behind the expression, right? Because that's like the true thing. Like whether we're sitting here and talking or not, we're both emitting a frequency at all times. And so is that resonance? Is there a cohesiveness in the resonance that we express, right? Because we can set this profile up to showcase what we think we want ourselves to be versus what we are. And so within what we're saying, does that house like actually what we are? Or if we say we're judgment free, but then in how we speak, there's judgment housed within what we use, how much do we really know ourselves to make a profile that will actually provide compatibility?
I guess that would be feedback through whoever you're paired with. So if you're paired with someone and you have like an effortless 5-hour conversation with them.
That happened the other night at this Kava and Kratom bar. sat down, and I was only going to be there for a little bit. I went after my yoga class, and well, no, I actually went for a yoga class. I do a midnight yoga class at this place, and after class, and this girl and I, we ended up talking for 3 hours. I thought it had only been like 25 minutes, maybe an hour. I was like, all right, it's time to go. I look, and they're closing, and it's 3 a.m. when this place closes, and I'm like, I stayed here a long time. This was a great conversation. Didn't even realize this took place.
Exactly.
And so what are the qualities, right? Where I guess
when you
we're
really
getting at the qualities
on
of
what was it,
what loses time to us when we're together, right?
like going into a flow state, more or less, like when you're making beats and you're just sitting there, and like 10 hours is like nothing because you're totally just in a flow state. So reaching that in a conversation is kind of interesting because they're saying something that's intriguing you, and it's just filling your mind with all these thoughts and like things that you want to add to what they're saying. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I was on the plane with someone flying to this shoot, and he was he was like a counselor for high schoolers at this school, and I have this little hobby horse of like the education system, blah blah blah. But just sitting with him, from the moment I sat down, he said, "Hi, how you doing?" I said, "Good," and then we just talked during a 5-hour flight nonstop until we got to baggage claim. So then it was retroactively going back and like, okay, well, what was it about that conversation? Because there were certain things that we paired on. Like he had a certain sense of humor that I matched with.
Okay.
His vocal cadence, our personalities. It's really sort of peeling back the layers of your personality and other people that share those traits.
My goodness. Yeah.
And it's like your interests, and there's a lot of things. Because if you think about your best friend, say Daniel was his name?
Yeah, the longest friend that I've had. Yeah.
It's weird to sort of then take that train of thought and apply it to people in your life, because you're like, oh shit, we think about things that we don't really match up on. It could be friendships, relationships with family, spouses. It is weird. Even us. Mm-hmm. And I could probably cut this out or whatever, but it is weird to think like, if it was the perfect software matching people based on these things, would we be matched? Because we might not match up on the types of, like, if our vocal cadence was off.
I would also say that it wouldn't be able to, it wouldn't work. I think that the software maybe eventually would be able to find it, but I would say there are people that will interact perfectly together and are perfect matches that the software would never put together. But
how is it? How would you define that? Because we'd have to look at something. We'd have to look at data. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because you have that intuition, and I'd probably share that intuition as well. But we'd have to like actually find out specifically, or that would be the goal with the company if we ever started this, is to be like, so somebody like that in a test group would say that, and then we'd have you like draw out what you're describing.
We would just put all those people together.
It's interesting. I mean, there's videos on YouTube of like swiping right in real life, and it's this woman, and there's these guys line up, and then she does the Tinder thing, but it's in real time.
I saw
Have you
this.
seen that
saw
video?
That. Yeah. I saw part of that.
So that's it. I mean, there's certain cues, like you look at somebody, and before they even speak, there's a swipe left or right, which can often but that's in a romantic context.
I think that it's a recognition of the energy signature that's being expressed from the individual. And some people have to find it through word expression, and they actually have to share space. And sometimes you just see a person from a distance, and you know that that's a person that you can interact with, you can be safe with, that you can be vulnerable with, and it's perfectly fine. And sometimes you meet people and you're like, this is someone that will take advantage of me if I am vulnerable and open. And so it's a dance of finding the safe space, finding the people that will respect the safe space. But as well as you want someone that will challenge you, because you want to be pushed towards greatness. It takes a certain amount of pressure, physical and mental, for physical and mental growth. But at a certain point, too much pressure will bring damnation or pain, or pain's a good thing, I think, but it can bring damage,
For sure.
But I want to jump back to when you said cadence and rhythm.
Do you want to go there? Because we were talking about ADD, and then we were talking about Alaska.
But at my brother's wedding, I was becoming overwhelmed by the cadence and the rhythm. I kept hearing and experiencing like the full scope of everything, and I started to feel like I was in a Tool song. just with how it was arranged. And I would lean in to try to engage in conversation with people, but then the overall rhythm of all the conversations flowing together would overtake me, and I found myself unable to stay engaged with the conversations that were directly in front of me because of how overwhelming just the rhythm of the entire event was. And it just, man, it
Would you say you have some form of social anxiety?
sometimes, but not as
Or
much
it's
as I
acute,
used to.
like it
Not as much
just
as I used to. Like, it
exposes
wasn't
itself
an
randomly.
anxiety thing there. It was just I would go to engage in the conversations in front of me, and then just the rhythm of the entire event would trump my ability to engage. And it was more interesting for me to sit within the rhythm of the entirety of it and to feel the entirety of it than to try to engage with a small piece of it. And I guess in that way add to the rhythm of it.
Yeah. Well, was that after like a couple failed attempts? Because sometimes it's like you'll be, not you, but you could be in like a social situation where you're chatting with somebody and suddenly you realize like, oh, fuck, okay.
No,
Like
I was
everybody,
with two best friends, and
it was with close people.
I was with
it wasn't
close-
with strangers, because
No,
I'm
not
imagining
with
like
strangers at
chatting
all.
with strangers. They're kind of looking around, and then suddenly you're like, okay.
No, these were best friends of mine. True, the kid that wanted to be here today, he was there with me, and I
we were talking to True.
Yeah, and then all of a
then
sudden,
you'd
I
just be
just
like
couldn't keep
thinking
my
about
strain
something
of
else.
conscience. No, it wasn't even that I was thinking about something else. It was literally the rhythm and the cadence of everything happening together.
What's
there
your
was
brother's wedding?
a beautiful what?
Your brother's wedding, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's your brother.
No, but
Yeah.
it wasn't an emotional thing. Like it was not an emotional instability. It was literally the music that was being formed out of all the conversations put together, and the rhythm of that. It was very primal. It was very uplifting, and I kept falling into that, and just an inability to continue a train of thought with anyone throughout the night. Like, and I wasn't like, I definitely cried and was emotional and was happy that my brother was getting married, but it was just like the overwhelmingness of the rhythm of all of it. It was very interesting. One of the first times I've ever had that experience in my life of just the rhythm or the cadence of that big event, because it was all, it was about the wedding. It was all cohesive for that. It was a very small, very intimate wedding. I think only like 100, 150 people or 120.
That's a lot. But it stood out to you though. I mean, you obviously remember it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It
was an experience that kind of stuck with you a little bit, and did you think about it like immediately afterwards, or was it like days? You just
no, the whole time. It still hasn't left.
In real time, you were like,
Yeah.
this is interesting. This is new. Yeah.
And it's made me examine just more of the surrender process
That's
to
a
the
big one.
cosmic dance, like allowing to feel and experience the dance, and being comfortable with the fact that I don't have to fill silence. I don't have to fill the space that silence brings, and that there's a great joy and a great ability to perceive more from within a silent space than if I'm bringing my own noise. It can be a little bit more challenging to notice the other hubbub around.
I usually get that in a work environment, like trying to be assertive and blah, blah, blah. And you're just like using it as like more of a defense mechanism, because of
A defense mechanism to pull away from conversation? Or
Oh, sorry. No, this is just, I was just,
you jumped a few beats ahead on me, didn't you?
found like in terms of like surrendering and realizing, like trying to find a way, like the connective tissue. Because when you mentioned that, it just reminded me of something. But now I realize like maybe that doesn't actually relate to that at all.
If it related to you in your head, it related. It relates.
The surrender, well, yeah, because would you say that when that was happening to you, did it make you more sort of look at your, like, more introspective?
No.
Were you more reflective on how you're coming across? Like something is happening to me right now? Or was this like you're more focused outward on the situation?
It was
Like you're
a
looking at these
widening
people
scope.
and this thing is happening and you're like, wow, this is weird. Or in those moments, is it like, what's going on with me versus what's going on with this situation?
Not at all. I just felt like dumbfounded constantly, because I was just literally unable to maintain a conscious stream flow. And like I would be asked questions and I would be like, oh yeah, but, and then like I would hear the music of all of it going on, and I would be like, I can't focus on expressing myself to you right now with this overwhelming rhythm that I'm experiencing and noticing.
That's really interesting.
But it's the same thing within nature. Like if someone sits still in nature, there's an overwhelming sound that will take on that's just the simple rustle of the trees, right? And if you're looking at a tree in fullness as opposed to a piece of a tree, the tree will start to dance and do beautiful things for you. You know, some people only experience this if they're on mushrooms or some type of hallucinogenic. But if you look at the tree in the full spectrum, as opposed to looking at one piece of it, you start to see the dance that the tree does, and, the involvement of all the elements, the wind flowing through, right? Is it the leaf moving, or is it the wind flowing over it that creates the sound? And yeah.
Doesn't it also trip you out to look really closely at things too? When you go up to a tree and just sort of plant yourself there, like super close to it, and just stare.
I'll hold a leaf and tell it I love it. Give it some strokes.
Serious. Well,
no, I'm serious.
Do you really say that I love you?
I was literally sitting in front of your house, sitting and telling the plants there that I loved them while I was waiting
inwardly,
for you.
like with your inner speech, or
I do it both ways.
Verbally?
Yeah. I'll do it verbally, or I'll mouth the words silently, or I will just emit the frequency that is towards the plants. Now, I've done this in nature, and I've had some interesting experiences with and without drugs. Without drugs, I went into this nature area, and I said, take from me, I have plenty. And within 20 seconds, I had all types of mosquitoes up and down my arm, laying on me and eating. And after about feeling that for about 30 seconds, I said, okay, that's enough. You've had enough. And they all left me immediately.
Oh, okay, I thought you were going to say you killed them all.
No, they started like spinning in a vortex in front of me. And if we truly engage with nature, right? Nature somewhat bends to our will. Like we don't have to chop down a tree. We can literally just tell the tree to grow somewhere else.
Did that give you super goosebumps when the mosquitoes left you and they're doing their little vortex dance?
Totally. I was like, my
chills.
God, you can integrate yourself into
now?
nature. Like there's no need to, buy Terminex and keep the ants out of your house that way. You can just say, okay, this is the space that ants are not in. You guys have that space over there. And if you truly engage with nature in that way, it will respond to you. It has to. Like if you go back to the biblical stories, whether you believe in them or not, like Adam and Eve, Adam was given domain over nature. And so if we incorporate that into our lives, even just through the power of belief, you can engage with it. And it's not an engagement to control it. It's an engagement to lovingly ask a request. And if that's allowed for you within the nature of that time, nature will totally do what you're requesting of it. It's the idea of manifesting something. And the other time
biblical thing.
that I had an experience like that is at Florida Gulf Coast University. Yeah. I hiked into a swamp. Okay. I was really focused on meditating at this time. Like I woke up and I was just like, okay, I have to go meditate. I just have to go meditate. Before I ate that day, I just hiked out into nature. I found a slightly raised up place around still water, swamps, bugs everywhere. I put a towel down. I sat on the towel, took my shirt off, sat and meditated for like an hour or two. Didn't get one bug bite. Not one bug landed on me while I was out there. And, they were all around me. They were flying all around me, but they were not coming into my field. They were not like engaging on my body. Some of those experiences around integrating with nature like that, I am not sure how to put words to them, but I know that there's a profound way that we can engage with nature where nature will support us as opposed to us feeling like we have to harness nature through, the use of science or other things.
But isn't that more aligned with what the Bible says about having dominion over nature, which would essentially mean to
I don't remember the exact
control
words. Well, I don't remember the exact words, but I think it's more about you have the right to name things. But no, it does say dominion, but I'm not sure.
I mean, it's translated from Hebrew. It's just a biblical story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
NPR, National Public Radio. Please donate and give often. We
WSJT 94.1.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I wonder the experience you had of like you're standing there, you're holding your arms out, and you say this mantra. Did you say it outwardly, or do you say it in your? Like
it was
inward?
not outwardly. It
You
was
just-
totally
you
an
thought
inward
those- you
express.
thought
I didn't
that
even
sentence.
like think the words though. Like it was not a word expression. It was a
What happened so quickly? So you
Yeah.
held out your hands, and that was the thought.
yeah. It was just like, take from me, I have plenty. And,
Right.
and those are the words that describe what happened. But like there were no words. It was literally a frequency expression.
Sure, yeah.
And they came, and then I said, okay, you've had enough, and they left. Like instantly, like right when
What
I said
think
it,
is
they all
interesting
flew
is
off.
like having, like, I feel like a lot of people have those sort of like, you're seeing the secret, you're having this thing, you're like,
Intimate
holy
moment
shit,
with
what is
nature.
this? Is crazy. But then the language to describe it will just fraction off into religious or pseudo scientific, but I mean, it's undeniable that if you're there and you say you have that mantra, that train of thought, and your body is covered in goosebumps, and you're like, holy shit, this is crazy. So there's that, and then bringing that back to the real world. It seems like we don't really have a way to sort of transmit that experience, because
Yeah.
it definitely happens. But even when you were describing it, it's sort of hard to
Oh, it is. It
really
is.
put a finger on what's going on, because it's
The-
like this intense emotional reaction, and then it's like the word used is like, energy, and you know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
A lot of ambiguity. Because like, what is really going on there, and how far can you really go with that? The whole feeling that there's something else really outside, like really weird, that can be experienced. That feeling that you're really onto something, or you have this like epiphanal moment, or you're out in the woods and you're holding your hands out, you say this thing and then something happens, but then, retroactively being like, okay, that was the universe talking to me.
But then also it can be an echo chamber, right? If someone has a set of beliefs, they will curb almost anything that takes place to them to fit the paradigm that they believe in.
Right.
Does someone believe in coincidence, or do they believe that coincidence doesn't really exist? And I find that the more logically minded people are, coincidences exist. The more spiritual someone is, they'll say coincidences don't exist. Or the more religious somebody is, they'll say coincidences don't exist. Like that's in God's timing. That's in, divine time. That's in universal timing. Whatever words they choose to use, they're all talking about the same thing. They just have a way that resonates and feels best for them to express it.
And when you sort of prime your brain to be looking out for something, you start seeing it everywhere.
Exactly. Like if you get someone that's never heard of numerology and you teach them a little bit about numerology, and then, they look at their phone, 300 plus times a day, they see endless amounts of numbers on their phone a day, but now they're paying attention to 1111, 1212, 333. And they're seeing these, but they're seeing endless amounts of numbers throughout the day, but now they're only focusing on those. It's kind of like how I see 239 all the time, which is the area code of Naples, which is my area code on my phone. And for so long, I felt like, okay, this is a call for me to move back to that area. But I'm just used to seeing 239.
Right.
And I'll see it all the time. Randomly, it'll be in the middle of just something that pops up on a screen, or I'll see the last digits of a number that's coming across the commercial, and it happens to be 239. And I could fall into any amount of correlating and like magnify how intense that is or the meaning behind it. But I also think it's probably just a coincidence as well as directed focus. Like I'm focusing on that, so I'm going to acknowledge and see it more often.
Do you ever have that experience of thinking about someone and then they call you? That's sort of a weird experience.
But then think about those
yeah.
experiments on the islands. They taught one group of monkeys on one island how to wash mangoes off in the ocean. And then on all the other islands that had no access to these monkeys, within a month or two, they all started washing the mangoes off in the water. So if you teach someone one thing, everybody else has access to it. I mean, I would say time is at one point. We experience time linearly, but if we get outside of experiencing time linearly and we recognize that it is all in one point, we have access to absolutely everything that time provides. Maybe. But like, so in that, it's like, do we recognize ourselves as separate from the whole of time? And then if we engage with the entirety of time, we gain access. Some people will call it the Akashic Records, which is a spiritual phenomenon that just means it's a place, it's a library where all information is stored, so to speak. But now you can gain access to all of that. if you put yourself into a certain mind state. Just like how, what was it? The theory of Nikola Tesla came up with a theory almost simultaneously to someone else coming up with the theory in Russia. And there was no way that they communicated at that time. There was no way, but it was like, before one paper was released to the public, another person had just finished the paper on the exact same thing. And it's like, as we develop access to something, everybody else develops access to it as well. But there was never also not access to it. And this is why I somewhat don't believe in intellectual property, because everybody has access to all things. And it's just in their own time that they may or may not realize it.
Yeah.
And so how do I say that this is my intellectual property when this intellectualness is meant for everyone? I can't. I feel like it's almost a way of withholding. It's kind of like how companies will buy patents that would make their companies obsolete. And instead of implementing the structures to advance society, they just say, no, I'm going to hold on to this and continue making money this way because it's already set up and it's easy. Yeah. And in that way, I feel like there needs to be regulation around impeding progress, because there are so many companies that impede progress because the system that they have already up works and gives them money. So don't change it because it's already working. We're just going to buy patents that would put us out of business and never do anything with them. And that's like that. I don't understand impeding progress in that way at all.
Those are gluten-free and vegan.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm going to have them. Dude, gluten-free, bro. I have to stay away from the gluten. It puffs me up, dude. The bridge of my nose will disappear if I have enough of it overnight. Puffy as can be.
Do you have celiac?
No, it's not like I get a bad shitting thing. It literally just puffs me up like crazy. I'll have black rings around my eyes, and I'll look like a raccoon. No joke. It's crazy. Somebody asked me if I was a crack whore once. I had a really bad wheat reaction. I was like, I've never done crack that I know of.
Wheat and crack. It's like totally. Could you imagine if eating wheat had that effect on you? Or if eating any type of food? Eating a sandwich and taking MDMA, a little different. Which will be interesting to explore why. I've always been sort of curious in that. But wait, can we finish that train of thought for a second?
MDMA and sandwiches?
Impeding progress, and also specialization and separation in subject matter, I think is interesting. I started doing this thing recently. I mean, we're talking about like opening up new YouTube tabs. I have this sort of OCD thing where if I'm focused in on something, I can't focus on anything else. Like if I'm working on my music, as soon as I start thinking about film, like film isn't interesting to me or isn't in any part of my brain, it seems, when I'm working on music. And then as soon as I'm on set and shooting, similar thing happens to music. So I'm trying to get over this over the years. And I randomly, like a few weeks ago, tried this little experiment on YouTube. Went to YouTube, typed in like intro to botany and like put that on 2x speed and then just watched that video and then tabbed over and just did like intro to ballet and then did that and then just kept going. Intro to cooking, intro to physics, intro to chemistry, intro to this, intro to that, intro to political science. It's just this weird way of like cutting right through all this like these arbitrary like distinctions between subjects, because when you go to like linguistics and philosophy of language and then political science and then chemistry, and you just see how we've sort of somehow just created this illusory separation. And if those were somehow bridged somehow in the future,
it's like the same lessons though are housed in all of them. It doesn't matter if you're doing ballet, chemistry, it's like the exact same lessons are found. It's the same human.
Because we start, we're lost in thought and language right now in this conversation. But if I just sort of back up and just see you as like a human organism, it's weird.
Is it? We'll have to get closer and just stare eyes to eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is something I started doing. Like I started this experiment called eye gazing, Katie. And it's because I was thinking about like eye tracking technology. Like VR has that ability now with the new Oculus headsets, and then I guess just the implications for like marketing are pretty broad because like it detects how long your iris is trained on an ad or something like that. So this was what I'm thinking about. So I got really close, and if we did it now, it is just the weirdest fucking thing because you're like, holy shit, I'm actually looking at the organism in real time, moving, and I'm not sort of fooled by language and how that takes me into a different, like, I'm actually seeing, it's very bizarre, because as far as we are now, we're sort of, we could probably do it real quick if you want to.
Yeah. No, I have a question though before we do.
Yeah.
Do you have the experience where I do this as well? I love this. I do this with people that are at least comfortable with it. So it builds a whole lot of intimacy very quick. I experience a lot of both eyes become one eye when I do it for long enough with someone. And I end up only looking into, it seems like I'm only looking at one eye, but as I then back up, I see the one eye shift back into two. Do you have that experience when you do it for long periods of time? No? Okay.
And it is interesting how you can have a different train of thought on this, because what you just described is something I wasn't thinking about. So it's...
Now, when you get close, are you looking each eye straight forward, one eye looking into
looking
each
at
other
one
eye, or do you have both eyes looking at one eye?
I've got both my eyes on one eye, and I'm looking at the micro movements, like as I see them now, because it cuts through this thing that I've just been calling the spell, which is more or less any time that you're not looking at me and seeing me as a organism, as an animal of biology, and seeing that each of these little movements of my arms are what they are. Where like the spell would more or less be how language puts you in this sort of daydreaming state as we're speaking to each other. We're sort of really just trained in on the movie.
It helps remove the facade, right? Yeah. When you say remove the spell, helps remove the spell.
The spell is like, if we're talking now about, we were talking about Alaska, and there's all this data, I'm seeing you and I'm here, right? But whatever's happening internally when you say those things, obviously you're not speaking French, you're speaking English. So whatever process is involved in decoding your speech and playing it so that I understand it, whatever that mysterious process is of meaning, that's what's really primarily taking up the mental bandwidth, it seems.
So mainly auditory, less visual, you would say then. Am I hearing that right?
It's like visual. It's like I'm here. But like as you're saying whatever you're saying, that's really what my brain shifts its focus to. Like in meditation,
internal processing.
When you shift your focus to say your feet versus the chair, it seems like the focus, attention or whatever, is really honed in. Obviously, your visual field is still there, but attention is sort of shifted towards the linguistic.
Am I following
meaning decoding?
What is being expressed?
Exactly, because if I started speaking French, all of a sudden that would just attention would shift. So another aspect of the spell is more or less like automated behavior throughout the day. So like you getting back in your car to go to your thing right now, you'll not be thinking about the spell because you'll be in the narrative.
I'll be in the spell.
Exactly. I'm just trying to like put a name to this ethos, this experience of like noticing the spell.
The construct, right? Undoing the construct. It'll just be like
me reaching over to grab that, to do this, to just do, like, it's more or less everything aside of eye gazing.
Would you say it's distraction based? Like it's things that we're doing to distract ourselves from the actual internal work?
It's like me going up to respond to an email. It's like any flow of conscious activity throughout the day that is not me looking into your eyes and noticing the twitches and the organism working.
Returning to authenticity, would you say? People expressing their exact nature and not reconfining themselves to fit a narrative.
But this would be private though.
What would?
And this is like unfiltered behavior. You know what I'm saying? So there's not like any meta awareness on it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. The lack of meta awareness is what I'm sort of pointing at to and just calling the spell.
Okay.
So me going to a shoot
and
doing everything on the shoot. When
you say meta awareness, that means like the awareness of the meta being the grandiousness?
Like meta aware of, like meta cognition is like thinking about thinking.
Okay.
So it's like you're thinking versus like in meditation, you're seeing a thought. You're like looking at it. So it's a similar thing with, quote, the spell, which is like we can have this experience now of actually like eye gazing and seeing that. And then everything that's not that. Do you want to bring your mic over? Because it might be interesting to like...
Does it need to be on that?
No, you can lift it. I'll probably edit this shit out. I don't even know. It's be an interesting experience just to have off the bat. Off the jump. Okay. It's got to be super, super close.
Yeah, it does. And I think we have to square off to each other. Not to duke each other, but it's important to get close.
Making out right now.
Just real close. We hold
It's way
each other
easier to do
tenderly.
with your girlfriend.
But I think this
So, yeah.
is a type of vulnerable space that's important to engage in with a lot of people.
So now I feel like when you're looking straight into my eye, though, but don't put any sort of like, really just try to see the automated behavior of my mouth moving in my eyes, the little twitches in my eyes, all like unconscious activity.
Observing your unconscious activity.
Like you see how your eye just moved right there?
Mm-hmm.
It just sort of happened, right?
Yeah. I switched from one eye to the other and then back to the one I was mainly looking at.
Right. So it really is like just noticing any sort of. So that would be, that experience that just happened is probably like this automated response. Do you know?
My smile? Or just the interaction? in
Yeah,
general?
but let's try to not put any emotional inflection on it. Just for a second, just try. Is it possible? Can you do it?
I think so.
Well, what are you thinking right now?
Nothing.
Really? It just seems empty?
Yeah, I'm not attributing any meaning to anything that I'm seeing.
It's so bizarre. Because as soon as you get so close to the eyes, you're like, these are the eyes of everyone.
A little closer.
I can't see your eyes though, dude.
I know. I smile too
relax?
hard and it squints.
Can you relax it?
I'm working on it. Hold on. Gotta touch my cheek. I'm just smiling too hard. Hold on. Yeah, no, the stoic face, huh?
Can you go like this? Can you try that? Wow. Yeah. What do my irises look like to you?
I feel like you got a little bit more light on my eyes to see.
Holy shit. It's so fucking weird. Can you try to not actually see Andrew and just see eyeballs for a second? Just imagine these eyeballs just being interchangeable.
Yeah.
That's what really is weird. Because there is Ross. And you feel like you're behind your eyes.
Perhaps.
See, I feel like I'm drifting, kind of going in and out of it. Do you feel that way too?
Somewhat. I get really locked on that eye. I can see it. It's very amazing. Yeah.
See, I think as soon as I moved in close, I think another just thought came like there's that personal boundary thing.
But there's more engagement though, because we have a magnetic field, we have an aura, whatever words we want to use to talk about it. So as we get closer, we don't have to verbally communicate, but our energy fields are interacting with each other. And so as we get closer, there's more vulnerability in that.
Do you have LASIK or contacts or anything?
No. All natty, baby.
Yeah, that is very bizarre.
Yeah, this one person said, I am the, I forget exactly how he said it, but it's like, I am the universe that which has a face looking out, and you are the universe which has a face looking out. And, yeah. I want to switch sides because I get a lot of my own reflection back in your eyes due to the lighting.
You can't really see. Oh, you're seeing yourself?
Yeah, I see myself in your eyes, and it's challenging to not.
I think when you get
see
so
my
close,
imagery.
and nobody ever has this experience.
Or just left to right, just one eye. Don't use the other one. Even close that one. Close that outside one.
See, it's like this thing of seeing like how the eyeball. It's like if you just isolate my eyeball for a second.
Yeah, no, I get on it every now and then.
I'm just seeing the eye and nothing else. Because as soon as I drift back here, I notice that it's like this involuntary perception of you again as Ross. Do you know what I'm saying? And there's everything here. There's what you're about to say. There's the facial movements. There's all these things that would be our personality, I guess you'd say, what we would classically refer to. Because if I was like talking like this, and that would be my personality, but it's whatever
I
has
met a
been
kid
programmed.
that was a
in.
meme the other day, you know, those, and I thought he was pulling my leg at first. I thought he was like doing a long form joke. And then when he left, I was like, oh no, like this is actually, that's how he is. He was like, yeah, bro. So like you in the gym, you getting swole, you lifting?
Oh my
I was
God,
like, nah, dude, I do
great.
some yoga. He's like, oh, I tried that once. Not enough weights on that plate for me. I got to lift weights. And he like, the whole time he kept doing that, he was a bro boy. He was that classic meme where the guy's got the hat on sideways and he's just like, sup, dude?
But that seems to be like back here. And then if you were to get like centimeters away from his eyeballs, that's what has just started freaking me out this past year. Because I'm like, holy shit, this is something we don't see ever, and this is everyone in our species. But they're like, they exist like from a distance, and then from that distance, you involuntarily just see them via their language, via their whole personal timeline that's led them up to that moment. But when you get so close,
so this activity is very visual based. And so have you done this activity or played with doing this activity, maybe just like holding hands and feeling, you know, what takes place when people are holding hands?
Just to see what happens.
Or you know, holding hugs for extremely long periods of time and what takes place to the individuals when embrace is going on and different things like that. Because this is visually embracing is what this is. But if we were to hold hands and have our eyes closed, you know, it would be a different sensation taking place. But it's the same thing you're getting at, though, would you say?
Do you think?
I think it is. It's just using a different sense to engage it.
Interesting. Okay. So you're saying like if you try eye gazing, but with a different sensory modality, is that more or less what you're getting at?
Yeah.
You want to try it? But you just close your eyes. And then you just like touch hands. I guess because in a meditation sort of, like in a meditative way, it's just forcing you then to only focus on touch, right? It just seems a little different though, because just going to use the word, you know, consciousness, you can't get away from it no matter what. You just are behind your eyes, right? So this here I don't think consciousness is the mystery that they're just endlessly sort of trying to get at. It seems like in neuroscience, philosophy of mind, sorry, I'm just sort of talking to myself. This sensory modality, you know, it's like we're not evolved to, I don't know if we're trying to figure this out as much, but we could just fuck around, like make it into an art type thing and just creatively explore. But it seems like when you get really close to the eye, that's when you're really getting to it. It'd be like if, oh shit, your eyes were open.
No. That does take place. It's funny that you say that close to the eye because I've been obsessed with eyes since I can ever remember. Yeah. And some of the very first things I've ever drawn were eyes. And I just, to me, the eyes have always housed all the information that an individual might want to not show everyone. But if I can sit with someone and look in their eyes for a little bit, I know pretty much everything about them. And I can start to tell them stories of their life.
Well, you start to know that after you speak to. There's no possible way you could know that. Speaking.
No.
Because if you were just isolating their eyes, like in Photoshop, you only have their eyeballs. That's everyone's eyeballs. What would differentiate a set of eyeballs, divorced from movement, from speech? Well, it'd have to have one of those other components. It seems.
Definitely. Because if I'm just looking at an eyeball and there's nothing attached to it,
right,
then I'm not able to integrate all of the individuality that person is.
That's what is weird to really sort of pinpoint.
But I would also say that it's a unity aspect, and that there really is no difference between any of us other than the set of sequences that we've gone through, or the DNA strands that we have, but we're all a representation of the exact same thing.
It's so weird getting so close to a human, and then there's just what would be when we're not speaking and we're just here. You know, the secrets of our lives would have to be transmitted this way. That's why like brain-computer interfaces has been like obsessed with recently. Because imagine if your inner speech right now, or whatever image that is in your mind, you transmit to me somehow, and I see it.
Did you see the AI program that they're using to recreate? They could literally take a gun or they'll put things to someone's head, show them an image, and then the AI program reading the wavelengths that come out of the brain is recreating the images that they were looking at, and it's getting very close to like actually what they're looking at, like the picture of the leopard and what the computer makes. You know, it's like you kind of tell it's an animal, but it's not there yet. But where that eventually goes is that there's going to be technology of a ray gun where you can point it at someone and know exactly what they're thinking.
It wouldn't need to be that. It could be a wearable.
No, exactly.
Or surgically implanted.
But I would also say that science is the effort of doing something externally that we all have access to internally.
You see how we just started talking about something, though? This is just fascinating to me. Not to derail where we're going, but I think this like constant sort of meta awareness, like these things like language are these whole philosophies. And I'm like, how much time do those motherfuckers spend inches away from someone? And you mentioned progress.
They're dogmas.
They're being in a like a capitalistic impeding some progress, and they're also being this sort of thought experiment based world that we live in, where you look at something and then you go off and think about it and write about it. Imagine if the sciences were done inches away from politics. It's so weird. It's very fucking... What were we talking about?
It almost brings intimacy away from it, if we think about it a little bit.
I'm so interested in the meaning process involved in what you're about to say to me, and subjectively focusing on it. What is it?
It's love.
But...
Unconditional love.
Wait a second, dude. Wait. But no, like meaning and understanding, and again, to the French analogy.
In my practice, I... have worked on removing language from experience.
Sure.
And the more I remove language from experience, the more I have access to and greater understandings that I come to. But then trying to translate those understandings and experiences back into language, there's a breakdown because language is not realistically able to express those things. Language is built on a dichotomy. It doesn't understand a spectrum. Like language is built on yes and no. Language is built on keeping us safe when we're young. And then at a certain point, we either start using language in a different way or we maintain that dogma that we were taught and we keep using it.
How can we start using it in another way? Because like say this experience right now, look at me as like this memory will be, you know, this moment, which will never happen again. And you're talking to someone later about this. And then it's a visual medium, your experiences.
Yeah. What would I say about it?
You would describe this experience right here, but it'd just be so much better seen, wouldn't it? So it seems like our language is not image-based the way that it could be, and thus improving. Because when you said something about when I remove language, I am able to gain access to ...
More experience.
The actual sentence that you uttered there, I wonder if that was rewritten 1,000 times.
Totally.
And what came to mind? Was there any other thing you were thinking of when you said that? Can you remember? It happened so quickly.
The original reason why I started
Are there 2 people
playing
like
with
Stephanie and George that you had that experience with?
It was about reaching out or playing with the idea of obtaining enlightenment was how it started. And I found that language impeded a lot of progress. And so I had the idea to remove language from experience.
When did you have that idea?
Before I started yoga teacher training.
Was it like a lightning bolt sudden moment or was it just a gradual? Was there one specific moment? See, this is what I just wonder if we're lost in how, you know, Einstein had an idea somewhere, but will never gain access to the actual train of thought because it dies with the human. So Ross had this thought at one point, but that is just for you're right now, Ross, that guy who had that thought somewhere. You can only retroactively describe where you were, maybe. You might not even be thinking about it. You might just write a whole book on this philosophy that you've developed, and actual reality was not represented in that book.
Yeah, saying things as simply as possible. And the more that has to be said to explain something, I think it's off topic. And it has to be said just as simply as possible.
What can be... Oh, this is weird.
To me, everything is love. Everything is unconditional love. And we will see love in many different ways, and we will express love in many different ways. But none of it is meant to be belittled, and none of it is meant to be put down. Everybody is doing their best at all times to express love. And they only have access to what they have access to at that time. And everyone's doing their best with that.
I'm glad that we can do this. Because this would not work with any other, like, this makes me think that there's something weird going on because just, I mean, it doesn't seem to be coincidences, but just doing like an audio test and then like all these sort of thoughts that you can't express to anyone because they're not interesting to anyone. They sort of just randomly like perfectly match onto.
A lot of these I get that experience with my own family. I've had it specifically with my brother, but this is where my head spins, is around a lot of these thoughts that we've talked about in this afternoon, and various branch offings. But when I try to talk to my brother about these things, he'll oftentimes look at me and say, "Do you ever have a normal fucking conversation?" And I'm like, "Zach, this is where my normal thoughts are. This is like what I think is meant to be looked at least for me." And how belittling it is to have someone tell you that you can't have a normal conversation. And then in that, I'm like, I don't want to have a normal conversation.
Sure. And then do you ever censor yourself around him because of that statement?
Totally.
Then the thought is...
Totally.
Don't say that because he's gonna criticize.
I don't want the automatic feedback, but then I also don't want to give up on self-expression. But we all have family, and then what is it? It's biological family versus found family, and so just because they birthed you, I mean, I think every mother and father deserves to be loved by their children, and every child deserves to be loved by their mother and father, but. Not everybody is capable of what the child needs when the child is born. There's a lack of embrace, a lack of support, and there's this desire to fit a social norm. My dad, a lot of the artsy things I did growing up, he would say that's negative attention you're seeking. And so for so long, I didn't do a lot of these things that I always felt called to because I had agreed that I was seeking negative attention. Like, I have an issue with Thanksgiving. I don't think Thanksgiving should be celebrated. I think it's terrible what we did to the Indians and everything. And like my understanding, like I'm grateful to get together and, be thankful. But like, I don't think it should be done in a way that we all just get around and eat and, I just don't like it. I've removed myself from Thanksgiving because of that. And, my dad says that's negative attention. And I go, no, you guys just aren't willing to see it from my perspective. Like, it's not negative attention. Like, just see where I'm coming from and accept that we can agree to disagree, or that it's just not something I'm willing to be a part of. Like, I don't want to celebrate it.
So you don't go to family Thanksgivings anymore?
No, it's not for me.
And does the family, you feel like, have a perception of you because of that?
Oh, yeah. It's
just
easiest...
you, or are there any other people you really feel comfortable with in your family? Obviously, you do.
My mom has always provided a space for me to speak fully and fully express myself. Whereas my dad and my brother have always, my dad's a law degree and my brother follows that footsteps very well. If they notice any holes in any argument or anything that I'm trying to express, immediate like shotgun, they shoot down the balloon idea that I'm trying to express when I fully don't even understand what I'm trying to express. I'm just trying to be nurtured in my expression.
Right.
And they're like, no, that's dumb. That doesn't make sense because of X, Y, Z. Yeah. And so then there's, the reality of it is they limit my expression when I'm around them.
And it doesn't make
And
you
if
feel
I
good.
go to express myself, I oftentimes will get the same, repeatable sentence of, this, that, and the other. And it's like, cool, I've heard that 1,000 times from you. Can we take the conversation elsewhere? Can we, see how else it could develop as opposed to I'm looking at it the wrong way?
Because, that's Ross, doing that. Yeah.
But as in my stepsister's kids,
to all of us, I feel like.
they talk to me the most honestly about it. They're like, Ross, you don't do normal things. What is it that has you trying to lead away from the norm? What are you searching for? And it's very interesting to me because they look at me as someone. They're like, you went to Alaska. You do yoga. They look at me as someone that is actively seeking to be opposite of the norm.
Sure.
And that's not the case. Like, this is just what
I
my
know.
norm is.
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is where my development has led me
Right.
to find meaning in life. And it's very funny. It's very
Like, you
funny.
never think of it like that, but you feel yourself returning to that place when you enter certain social situations. For them, it's just stayed there. Like, you know, when you talk to Grandpa Joe, it's going to be the same fucking thing. And
Yeah.
Why did that is very strange, because even if we were to pull them into this world that we're living in right now in this moment. Oh fuck, you gotta roll. All right,
Yeah,
okay.
I gotta
All
go.
right,
I got 20 minutes.
cool.
I gotta go.
Goodbye. Bye.